Welcome back to Walsall Fan TV, the joy and the pain. Today, we're going to be talking about the sacking of Jamie Fullarton. And to join me, we have Gabriel Sutton. And he is the 12,000 follower Twitter sensation. How you doing, Gab? You right?
Hi, Simon. Lovely to see you. How are you keeping, pal?
Oh, it's good. I feel better after a win yesterday.
I can imagine.
We'd sort of gone through a bit of a rough patch, but it's nice to sort of get another win on the board.
And definitely safe now as well. That's
definitely
safe.
I think ticked off. People were saying we weren't mathematically safe, but I mean, none of those teams down the bottom are going to be winning the last games. Particularly, I was thinking particularly Barrow. I didn't think they would get any more points, and then they went and beat Forest Green 4-0. That was like
3-0. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
That's ridiculous result, really. But I mean, that's potentially saved Barrow from the drop because all their games are against the top six.
Yeah, games. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who's going to go down.
Well, we thought Oldham were going to get out of it.
They've probably got the hardest. They've probably
potentially the hardest.
The internet's been a bit on off, but they've probably got the hardest. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Barrow. I think Barrow probably got the toughest. I think, but then it's difficult for Oldham and Stevenage, of course, have got Scunthorpe to play. So if they beat Scunthorpe, they're they're potentially safe, aren't they?
You'd want to still have Scunthorpe to play, wouldn't you? Ideally,
rather than Forest Green. Although Forest Green have sort of capitulated a bit. I don't think the way they're going, they're going to make champions, are they?
I don't know if they've capitulated because they've still actually taken 10 points from the last 5 games, but they've not quite been in the hot form that they were maybe earlier in the campaign. And Exeter are really coming up. I mean, I'm going to Exeter against Rochdale next week. I'm really excited about that one because I think that could be the day they secure promotion. So delighted for everyone connected with City.
Yeah, Exeter are sort of really in a very good vein, aren't they, at the moment? I think they're going to take the title. I think the way it's going, as you say, Forest Green 10 points from 5, but they're dropping points when Exeter aren't. So I think that's going to mess them up. But they'll still finish top 3, so they'll still be up there. Right then, reason for today's call. Great to get you on. Jamie Fullarton. Jamie Fullarton. There had been quite a few rumblings that things weren't right at Walsall. And Jamie Fullarton is he the full guy for it, or was he the reason for it? That's perhaps what we're opening up today. Your immediate thoughts on the sacking? I don't think it's classically a sacking, but I mean it is really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm relieved for everyone associated with Walsall Football Club that Jamie Fullerton isn't there, especially people that that are on the books. Often, you've got to look at the academy. Miguel Lera left as academy manager, and since then we've seen a few sort of young players actually leave the academy. It's had a massive sort of downturn under Fullerton, and I think that there's a big concern about the impact that he's having on some of these young players who are very impressionable and at quite a vulnerable sort of stage of their sort of lives, I guess. I'm really glad that he's no longer around Walsall Football Club, and I don't say this lightly. I like to be fair. I like to give people opportunities, but this is something I've done a lot of research into, and there's been a lot of allegations against Fullerton throughout his career. There was murmurings at Bolton when he lined a group of boys up against the wall and got the rest to fire balls at them. There was allegations of him at Notts County when he was rude to staff and forced certain members of the media, or he didn't necessarily force, but his actions led to certain members of the media team leaving. I've had a message from someone who worked for Halifax Town saying something similar. There is a pattern across his career, and I think that having Jamie Fullarton at the football club is actually very damaging. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he's a bully, he's a narcissist, and shouldn't be working in football.
No. I think when he first came in, there was talk about his great contacts in the game. He'd been associated with a team, a training academy in Spain. But then when you look at the players that he's actually brought in, he's not got great contact. I think he's just brought his mates in, really, because everybody that's signed for Walsall since he's been here, I think bar maybe one exception, have all worked with him previously. So, like, he's not really sort of brought a wide circle of people in. He's just grabbed people that he's worked with before that he hasn't fell out with, perhaps, and he's brought those in. And at the fans forum, I had a nice chat with him, and he was talking to me about this checklist of character, and it wasn't just about the player's ability, and we were sort of bringing the person in rather than just the player. But I think it's been clear from watching Walsall, particularly of late, there ain't a lot of character there. If that was the big thing for bringing him in, the character, then that's a big failing. That's a big failing, because the quality of the players he's brought in, character is not something that sort of stands out from what we can see. There was one part of the conversation I had with him, which I won't say wound me up at all, but I mean, so I'm used to dealing with different characters. But I mean, Walsall, I think quite a few people were aware that Walsall were talking to Tishimanga. He ultimately went to Chesterfield, didn't he? But Walsall had been in talks with him, and Walsall thought they were going to get him, and he chose to go there. But when I broached that with Jamie Fullarton, he said he'd not been talking to him, and they'd got 100% of the targets they'd gone for, which is, you and I both know, in a football world, that is total rubbish. You never get everybody you want to get. It sort of just discounted anything that hadn't been sort of signed and over the line. So the fact that he put that front up sort of told me a little bit about him. What do you think of that? Okay, we've got a bit of a connection. We've got a bit of a connection problem. We're back with Gabe in a minute. As far as Fullerton is concerned, I think from his point of view, over the period he's been here, he's put some structure in place. But I mean, how much of that structure was there already? Is the biggest question of all. Has he really made a difference structurally to the football club? I think Lee Pomley must have been tipped off by the bullying. We have talked about it online. We've had issues. 1 second.
Hi.
Yeah, we had talked
technical issues.
That's okay. We had talked about with Lee Pomley some of the issues about bullying, and he responded saying if there was anything true in those rumours, he would deal with it very abruptly. But maybe that is why he's removed Fullerton. But the question is, we've sort of mentioned the bullying and harassment and previous issues with Fullerton.
Sure.
But just putting that aside, his performance since being at Walsall, would that warrant him staying anyway? Because he's not covered himself in glory in the operational sense.
Yeah, I think the operational sense is fair, and I think the recruitment hasn't been good enough from that perspective. But I do think that your starting point as a football club has to be let's have people at the football club who are going to encourage those around him, and Jamie Fullerton isn't that, to say the very least. So I understand the points about the recruitment, but I think that the bullying thing, I don't think you can ignore that. I think that's a hugely important thing. And even if Jamie Fullerton was the best in the world at recruitment, I still wouldn't want him at my football club because of the person that he is. And I think that when Leigh Pomlett took over, I really admired what he brought to Walsall Football Club because of that transparency, because of that willingness to engage with fans after he had very little of that under Jeff Bonser, and I did admire that a lot. But recently, I think that I've got, first of all, big question marks over Pomlett based on the decision to appoint Jamie Fullerton in the first place, because you've got to do your due diligence on the people you bring into your football club, and I'm not sure Leigh Pomlett did that. It would have taken a few searches to find out what Fullerton's history is. And secondly, I think some of these things I might not necessarily be able to share in detail for legal or confidentiality reasons, but I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Leigh Pomlett did have an idea of what was going on under Jamie Fullerton and chose not to do anything about it. Unfortunately, you'll just have to take my word at that, because I can't offer the evidence that I would like. But I do have question marks over Leigh Pomlett, and I am sort of concerned for Walsall Football Club from that perspective.
I think he's perhaps sought advice from somebody before the appointment, and just gone with it without the wider search. Perhaps I think the fact that he's taken Fullerton out is a positive thing. As you say, maybe it was a very bad appointment to start with, but the fact that he's acted and not let things run on is
there's acting, but
positive.
you've also got to acknowledge that you've made a mistake. And actually, the statement from Walsall Football Club was a very warm and magnanimous one towards Jamie Fullerton. So this wasn't a football club that's acknowledging, I'm really sorry, we got this one terribly wrong. It was saying, thank you to Jamie Fullerton for the work that you've done for our football club. So the fact that Leigh Pomlett has chosen to not have Jamie Fullerton on the books of the football club anymore, I don't think that means he's recognised that he's made a mistake. Okay, I'm delighted that Jamie Fullerton is no longer associated with Walsall Football Club or any football club, but I don't think Leigh Pomlett has taken accountability for his actions, and that would be a concern for me. And it was the same with his dealings with the Independent Saddlers Sports Association as well.
Well, Leigh Pomlett is coming on my channel, so that's one of the questions I'll ask him.
Yeah, I'd really like to see if you can put some of these questions to him. I'd really like to see what his answers are.
I think the statement from the club is a polite, business-like exit, isn't it? It's sort of not stirring things up. It's just a polite, he's going, thanks very much for your time, now get lost sort of thing. So it's not sort of muddying the waters, and as you say, perhaps protecting his poor decision from the first point. I think Fullerton's biggest mistake, I think, was bringing in Mike Flynn, because when Matt Taylor was in charge, Matt Taylor was an inexperienced manager who needed a director of football there. But obviously Mike Flynn is more than capable of sourcing his own players and makes Jamie Fullerton very replaceable.
Well, I think Matt Taylor, I think under the right director of football, could have been a decent manager. Obviously, you'd mitigate that by the fact that Michael Flynn, when he first came in, he did get results out of this group of players in a way that maybe Matt Taylor didn't, to the extent you're hoping for. I'm certainly not willing to write off Matt Taylor as a head coach in future, and I think in different circumstances he could do well. He's obviously got a very good reputation at youth level, so I think he deserves another opportunity. But I think in terms of Michael Flynn, what you've got there is someone that kept Newport up, the Great Escape. They were 11 points adrift in early March in 2017, and he kept them up on the final day. After that, he got them into 2 playoff finals in the following 4 seasons. They were unlucky not to win one of those games, and Yeah, so Michael Flynn's done a marvellous job at Newport County, and he's a proven League Two manager. And I think when you've got so many question marks over Walsall Football Club and the way they're operating at the moment, I think it's really helpful to have a manager like Michael Flynn who can look after himself, who doesn't necessarily need the same amount of guidance, because he probably isn't going to get it, if I'm going to be brutally honest. So I think Michael Flynn, is a great appointment, and I think he's the one that gives Walsall Football Club some hope going forward.
Yeah, I think saying, as you say, support. Matt Taylor, he had Neil McDonald, which is an experienced assistant beside him, which didn't really give him the support he wanted. On the channel, I referred to him as the ghost, because he never seemed to be involved in anything. And then you look at Jamie Fullarton. Matt Taylor had got an idea. He wanted to play 4-2-3-1, but he hadn't got the players to play 4-2-3-1, and nobody told him. And then the moment, and that's where Jamie Fullarton should have been stepping in and saying to him, you can't play one little guy up front and expect to hold the ball up. And that was the problem. Now, Neil McDonald, this is what wound me up massively. The moment Matt Taylor left and he was in charge for one game, he went 4-4-2 and put two up front. Like, why has he not had that conversation with Matt Taylor and banged on his door and put his hands around his throat and shook him to say, it's not working, 4-2-3-1, you've got to change it.
Well, I suppose we don't necessarily know that conversation didn't have place, and Matt Taylor didn't stick with the formation that he wanted to go with, I suppose.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously Neil McDonald or Jamie Fullarton should have been addressing that. So, like, as fans, you can see, like, George Miller, player on loan from the Championship, running around like a headless chicken, putting his all into his role, but really just feeding on scraps, no support, and he was clearly struggling. Another bad one was the appointment of Connor Wilkinson, bringing him in. Now, Connor Wilkinson.
Hang on. Can you give me 1 second?
Hang on. We got Steve.
Hello.
Stephen. This is Stephen, who joins me on the channel. Gabriel, he's very rude.
Yeah, Stephen.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt massively, but about the George Miller, like, you can see he's passionate. He wants the ball. He wants to score goals, but one up front is just not giving it for him, and that's what he done. Right.
Connor Wilkinson was brought in to play as centre forward and given the number 9 shirt, but Connor Wilkinson is not a centre forward; he's a winger.
I mean, well, when he played for Leyton Orient last season, he tended to play on the right of a front three, kind of cutting inside. I think sometimes because he's tall, people assume that maybe is he more of a centre forward, someone who can hold the ball up. I think he plays a bit more sort of off the cuff than that.
Yeah. We've had news that he's torn his ACL, which is the same injury I had in 2003, way back. And that finished me off as a footballer. Not that I was in the professional ranks or anything like that. I mean, that was sort of finished me off. I think he's probably going to get a better surgeon than I had, perhaps. But yeah, I think Jamie Fullarton, perhaps with support from Matt Taylor, he brought Connor Wilkinson in to play him as a centre forward, gave him the number 9 shirt. And then on the first interview, Connor Wilkinson describes himself as a winger. That sort of tells you all you need to know. So this checklist that Fullarton had gone through was obviously not a very robust checklist. Like asking the player if he wants to play as a target man up front. Walsall have not had a target man, a solid, big number 9 target man for about 3-4 years.
Well, Andy Cook a few seasons ago,
Yeah, Andy Cook was exactly you know the lower leagues better than anybody. Within your squad, you've got to have a big number 9 who can be an aerial power up front.
An Andy Rammell type.
Andy Rammell, yeah, that's it. There's I was talking to someone yesterday, Brett Angel, when he played for Walsall several years ago, well, quite a few years ago now. He was a right cart horse, but he was a great target man. He could hold the ball up, threat from set pieces, and he was excellent for that reason.
I think the other thing I'd be really intrigued to get your views on this, Simon. I think part of the reason why Walsall maybe needs someone with that sort of physical presence up top is because you probably need Manny Month as a defender because he can air balls out of the box and he's powerful, isn't he? But in terms of what he can do with the ball, it's pretty much just pinging it down the line, isn't it? As opposed to taking too many touches or switching the play. He's not particularly cultured, in my opinion, but he's a really important centre back. So really, you need someone that can win those physical battles and deal with maybe the longer balls, perhaps. And I guess George Miller, he's got a bit of upper body strength, but he's probably not the tallest. Kieran Phillips probably wasn't that type of player either. So definitely missing a bit of physicality up top.
Well, he played with Brendan Kiernan up front yesterday, and Brendan Kiernan's got some good touches and link play really well, but he's just not got that physical strength.
Well, he's quick, isn't he, Brendan Kiernan? He's not
quite quick,
yeah.
Now, I think, as you say, up front, ideally, you want that big physical presence plus a nippy guy alongside him. That's your perfect combination of the two up front. I've got to pick you up on Manny Month, though. I'm really impressed with Manny Month. He's not. Okay. He might look like a tank, but I mean, he's very quick, and his distribution of the ball is very good.
Oh, really? I'm surprised about that. Okay.
No, he's a very good player. I think when Walsall first signed him, a Tranmere fan said to me, he needs an experienced guy aside him. And having Don Daniels coming in recently, that has really sort of solidified the Walsall back line. And that's been massive benefit to us. But Manny Month, tremendous respect for him. He's a very good quality player. But as I say up front, there's George Miller with the right service and a big guy alongside him would have done far better for Walsall. Would have done, and he has done well. He's scored like 11 goals. But he needs that support. And then come back to recruitment again. Walsall have bought in Devante Rodney, saying he's the big centre forward we want. Well, he's a winger as well.
And wasn't he injured when he signed as well?
He was. He had earlier in the season he'd had a heel injury, and I thought it was connected to that, but I did have word that it was just a twinge in his back. He had a small back injury, so it wasn't a serious. If it was a heel injury again, that would have been sort of great red light, really. But who did he play for previously? Jamie Fullarton.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to ask you about as well is Tyrese Shade, because he's another one that's been converted to a wing-back role at times under Michael Flynn. I don't think he played last week, but him and Osadibe seem to have been converted into wing-back. Obviously, Osadibe seems to be a bit of a divisive figure among Sadler's fans as well.
Osadibe, he was trying to play Osadibe, who again is a winger. He was trying to play him as in the number 10 role, and he just couldn't get hold of the ball and couldn't get going in that position. Moving him to wing back is essentially he's back in a winger role and looks a good player again. He's insistent. That's the problem, and I think Walsall have got an option of another year in his contract. Possibly they may take that. They might sort of choose to part company. I don't know. Shade is a strange one. From Leicester, he came as a striker come winger, and we're playing him as a wing back. But guy has talent, but he can't get past players. The fundamental requirement of a winger is to be able to beat players on a one-on-one. Yeah. He can do that. He hasn't gone past. I think the amount of times he's gone past a player in this season is probably maybe or twice, perhaps. He just doesn't go past players, and you've got to be able to.
I mean, I look at it and I see someone like Brendan Kiernan. I thought early in the season, Brendan Kiernan had some good form as a sort of left winger. Whether you could convert him into a wing back, I feel like that might suit him almost more than playing as a second striker from an outside perspective.
Definitely. And until Al-Sadi's sort of improvement, Brendan Kiernan was our most creative player with 4 assists. And then suddenly he's not playing. Well, he's a much better player than Shade, in my opinion. He can go past players. He's much more creative. Maybe the defensive side of the game, perhaps not got quite the pace of Shade. But I can't understand why Shade's got so much game time and Keenan's been resting on the bench, unless he's been struggling with an injury or something. He's still got a lot to learn, of course. He's still got a lot to learn as a young player. But here we are at this stage of the season. It's the Walsall players that you need to be playing, not loan players who are going to be disappearing in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the thing. You've sort of sometimes it's worth maybe sacrificing 1 or 2 results in order to be able to gauge some of these lads that have come through the academy and see sort of where they're at. And I'd be really interested to see if there's any kids that have come through. I think there's a midfielder or an attacking midfielder that's come through the academy whose name escapes me, that a lot of fans, like a 17-year-old, that a lot of fans are really excited about. Is that in?
Ronan Mayer.
That's the one. Yeah.
Ronan Mayer, he has been doing, and I think he's still 17. I think he might have just got 18. He's doing a great job in the reserves. The reserves quite often get tanked and get beat, but he's the shining light. He's sort of outstanding talent all over the pitch. And I think when people first look at him, they think little lightweight guy. But I mean, he can certainly handle himself. And I'm not sure how many he's scored for the reserves this season. But I mean, he's on the score sheet every week. So he's definitely a player that should be getting minutes in the first team. When we talk about player development, and again, Jamie Fullarton should have been pushing for this. When you've got a player that's doing well youth level, starting to bring them through, cameos off the bench, last 10, 15 minutes, see how they get on, give them longer runs off the bench, 20 minutes, half an hour. But they've not been near the first team. Ronan Mayer, and then the other player that we're sort of quite keen on, Shay Willock. He is, now listen to this, is a big, strong, physical number 9.
Oh, right, okay.
But he's not getting near the first. He had one cameo for about 5 minutes, nearly scored, and then he's out the team. Obviously, at 17, he's still a rough around the edges. But I mean, Walsall got him from Solihull Moors, and he scored something like 38 goals in 18 games or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time sort of 7, 8 years ago under Dean Smith when Walsall seemed to find it quite easy to produce players from the academy. Yeah. But in more recent years, it feels like that's kind of gone away from the club a little bit. But if you can produce some of these young players and maybe pick up players that drop out of a Birmingham or a Villa or a West Brom at an early age and develop them, then you can have quite a good model there.
Well, hopefully, Rob Williams has returned as academy manager. And I think we had quite a positive run of players coming through.
I always love a reunion with Rob Williams.
Pardon?
I always love a reunion with Rob Williams.
He's going to come on the channel as well. So he's going to be on the channel in the middle of May. So I want to talk to him about, it's that critical gap, isn't it? When players are coming from youth team, just breaking into the first team, that's such a difficult thing to transition from youth football to men's football effectively. So I want to talk to him about what his plans are for that production line to sort of become stronger.
And the lad Fulks, who's been on loan at Kidderminster, whether he could sort of make a break for it next season, because it feels like left back or left wing back is maybe position that could open. We don't necessarily, Stephen Ward seems to have struggled a bit this year, so maybe there could be a gap opening up for him as well.
Yeah, Stephen Ward, I think he's got a great pedigree, but
Sure.
sadly, I think his pace has gone, and he's in all the games he's played early season, he was targeted every week, and you could see he's got no confidence. Every time the winger's coming, he's backing off from the winger, trying to give himself space, enable him to cross the ball for free.
Yeah.
But Matt Taylor just kept on playing him. And that was, I think, Lee Folkes, he's, as we say, he's been playing men's football for all season. He did have a breakthrough and injury, but I mean, he's back up and running. He potentially could be a first team left back next season, but he's definitely going to be a squad man for next season. Joe Willis is another one, attacking midfielder.
You've got a few midfielders that have come through the academy, because there's Sam Perry as well, who looks quite neat and tidy. I saw him against Scunthorpe earlier in the campaign. I thought he looked quite neat.
Sam Perry, he came back into the team. He was one of the first changes when Neil McDonald had his one game in charge. He played against Tranmere, first game of the first full start of the season, and he was awesome. And then he's not played since. I can't understand it really. But with the injury to Liam Kinsella, I was expecting him to start Saturday, and then he didn't get a start. But Sam Perry is an excellent footballer. He's obviously he's not got the experience of Liam Kinsella, but he's a very powerful CDM, and he's got a much better eye going forward.
Okay.
But I expect good things from him, Sam Perry.
Yeah. That's really exciting. It'd be great to see Walsall produce another exciting crop of talent from the academy. So sounds like you've got a few there with Folkes, with Mayer, with Perry coming through. Shea Willock as well. So hopefully they'll get their opportunity under Flynn.
Well, hopefully we're going to sort of get that rolling through. I just want to address some of our comments. We've had a run of comments. But I mean, I didn't want to interrupt you as we were going through. Matt Taylor never managed at this level. He was never going to do well. Flynn.
Rob, well, just if I can quickly respond to that one. Rob Edwards at Forest Green Rovers had been working in youth work, coached England under 16s, Wolves under 23s. He'd never managed at this level, and yet he could take Forest Green to the title. So I don't necessarily agree that you have to have managed at this level before.
Sometimes it works, doesn't it? Sometimes it works.
But again, Forest Green Rovers have a really good infrastructure, a really good structure in place. They've got like a proper director of football that communicates really well. They've got head of recruitment. So it's all joined up. So it helps Rob Edwards do what he's done. So I think if you put Matt Taylor in Rob Edwards' situation, do you get a similar result? That's the question. I think similarly, I think Rob Edwards would have struggled at Walsall in the circumstances that we've seen this season. So I do think that you need a bit of context, but I take the point.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question. Which team do you support?
I support Birmingham City.
Birmingham City. Okay.
Yeah, but I've really got myself into sort of lower league football over the last 7-8 years, and Walsall were one of the clubs that really got me into it. I've just really enjoyed being kind of close to the pitch and being able to hear the players. And I remember going down to Walsall in the 14-15 season under Dean Smith, and that was one of the years that kind of got me into lower league football. So I'm fond of the Saddlers, and hope that you can do well.
Excellent. I think the benefit, as you say, of the lower leagues, in more cases, the players are playing for the love of the game, not for the money. Like sometimes the Premier League footballers are just playing for the money, aren't they? Some of them.
Yeah. And there's so much corruption at the top of the game. And this is part of the reason why I'm so glad Fullerton has left Walsall, because it feels like you've got people that you can connect with and that want to do something for their town, for their community. And I'm really glad that you've got that change now. But again, it's really good people at the football club. Michael Flynn, I think, is a fantastic person. We saw the connection that he had with sports at Newport County. I hope he has something similar at Walsall.
Yeah, he's. I think he's going to be good. And Wayne Hatswell alongside him. I think that's quite a solid team there. Let's just have a look at I've missed quite a few of them, so I do apologise for those I've missed. Let's Taylor will get another chance, and hopefully he does well in the future.
Yeah,
so that's good. I think everybody liked Matt Taylor, and I think when he got sacked, nobody was really calling for him to be sacked.
No,
because people were frustrated with the way the team were struggling, but they hadn't really. I think it was starting to turn perhaps on him. But as you say, it's about structure. There's one manager that had his first role, if I remember correctly. Ray Graydon had not managed.
Oh, the Walsall legend, isn't he?
Yeah, he hadn't managed his own team. He'd been coach at Port Vale, of course, but I mean, he hadn't managed his own team, as I recall, until Walsall, and then we all know what happened then. Nice one. I think let's just check Manny Month. Comment on Manny Month. Let's get that 1 second. Being one of Walsall's best players. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much he's improved with your lot in terms of his distribution and stuff like that, because it's probably not something that I'd have associated with him beforehand. So that's really interesting to know.
Yeah, I think right at the start of the season, I would have said differently, because at the start of the season, he was very ponderous and very slow, and it was like and he was alongside Ash Taylor, who was slower still. And that's why Walsall struggled early doors, because you got two players there who just got no pace, and they were just getting sort of smashed every time.
Yeah, Hartlepool away was a really tough one defensively, wasn't it? With Taylor in particular.
But Manny Month, I don't know whether it's a fitness thing or confidence thing, but I mean, now the pace he gets now, he's certainly not slow.
Oh, he's always been a real athlete, as well as having that strength. It's not he's not a sort of an old school in the sense of not being able to move. Like, he's got that mobility about him, definitely.
Yeah. Message here from Moggy. Gab, you're absolutely correct. The most important thing is to set up a club in a professional and supportive way to the head coach manager. This has sadly been lacking at Walsall, but hopefully that's coming together now.
I hope so, and appreciate the comment, Moggy. And I hope Walsall can start to rebuild. Still big questions over for me, which I think Leigh has to address, but a big step taken this week. Yeah,
I think I'm looking forward to getting him on the channel. I did speak to him at the ground, and he said he'd come on whenever I wanted. So I put a call in about a week ago. So I'm waiting for the return call. And but obviously, with everything going on, I can understand why he perhaps didn't come on immediately. But of course, another thing is the Jamie Fullarton, because of the ructions and that's going on. Maybe he made that decision to encourage season ticket sales, perhaps.
Yeah, possibly, and Walsall probably do need that sort of influx of cash at the moment, because it's obviously been a difficult time for the club after the pandemic. And I think that's the one thing I would say in support of Pomlet and the other people at Boardroom level, that they have successfully navigated the pandemic. And I think that's something that clubs got right, and the appreciation that they had for the fans when they wrote the names of each of the fans that didn't
on the shirts. That's it.
Yeah, on the shirt. So I think that was a big step as well. So hopefully fans can come back and the club can start to rebuild again.
Yeah, I think one thing that Lee Pomlet has tried to do is buy the lease off former owner Jeff Bonser. So I think at the moment it's probably around about 450 grand a year he takes in rent, which from a small club like Walsall, that's a real big chunk of the budget. So I I think Lee Pomlett's popularity will rise very much if we can get that deal done, and bring it all under control. And then that opens up Walsall to more opportunities for new investment and
more, because that's the modern game in a way, isn't it? It's maximising. So if you own your ground, you can then have other commercial opportunities. You can have events and earn money as a club from that. So that would certainly help.
So I think that's the next step for him, and I think that is his ultimate exit strategy. I think he said when he came in that he wanted to get Walsall back to the top of League One and perhaps into the Championship, bring the ground back under Walsall ownership. I think if he does that, I think in history he'll go down as being the guy that's made a massive move and massive help for Walsall. But I think until that happens, and things with the Fullerton situation, perhaps some a little bit aggrieved, perhaps, but we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's been really good, Gabriel. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, and I'd like to return the favour and come and help you if I can.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you on EFL Debate at some point as well, Simon. So yeah, it's been great to chat.
Brilliant. Thank you. Cheers. The joy and the pain. Walsall Fan TV. Thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. Thanks.